that's the kind of stuff that encourages racism, when you've got these different groups not having a large sort of like pool of a bunch of different people from different places, different races, different ethnicities to sort of coexist together and cohabitate, you know what I mean? Okay, apparently Hunter Avallone debated Brittany from Politically Provoked. All I know is that Brittany is a MILF, okay? I'm saying it right now. I'm getting it out there. All right, the truth must be known. Apparently she was pretty sus in this debate, but she is a MILF, which will no doubt probably cause some bias in my end of things. But let's go ahead and let's just hop right into it, huh?
Lot of change really fast onto people. They just started getting used to the idea of gay marriage and all this stuff is happening, and then now you have transgenders in their face.
No, 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 no. Stop.
It
I'm
is.
not saying no, 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 no. We're not going to halt progress and
It's not a halting progress. It's
we're not
slowing.
going to slow down progress on
not thinking
freeing
progress, actually.
marginalized groups because it might scare the bigots. That's not how this
Right?
works, okay?
They just couldn't own people anymore. They didn't have equal rights. That came way.
You know what?
down
You're
the
right. It did become actually it was a slower process, and that only further destroys your.
Wait. Oh my god, wait, is she actually unironically arguing that what the is she actually arguing that we should like slow down progress because it makes the right and like bigots more angry and fight harder against progress? And that if we just kind of boil the frog then it'd be better? Oh my god, that's really, really dumb. I'm sorry, Brittany, but that's very, very dumb.
Point because you can now look, and because of that quote unquote slow process, it actually stems to a lot of the systemic racist issues we have today.
Imagine what would have happened if they were given instantly equal rights and
Imagine what would have happened if there was no Jim Crow. God, I know, man. The world could have gone into chaos. Like, do you hear yourself right now? So how are you doing? I've heard a lot about you recently. With apparently you've been red pilled or something. I don't know. Maybe you want to fill me in.
Yeah, I think I have been red pilled on a couple issues. I mean, I don't know if you'd call, I guess you'd call it red pilled. Mostly immigration.
She's not talking. How Guys, does anyone know the background? Like, why is she? Why is her mouth not moving? Is there just an insane delay on her camera, or is she actually doing ventriloquism right now? Chat. What's the story behind this? Oh, there's something wrong with her camera. Okay.
And white people becoming a minority, which I don't think is a good thing.
Okay.
And let me just like adjust it to the chat because how you mentioned that he talks weird too. Okay, so yeah, he's claimed to be a professional debater, and that he's rhetorically effective. I don't think it's rhetorically effective if you can't hold my attention. You're trying to overcomplicate simple things that he could easily say. That's not effective. I couldn't follow like any of that at 2 a.m. when I'm freaking drunk, and he's trying. I need like a lot of Adderall for that kind of conversation. Like,
I understand. Yeah, the way he was talking was a little bit on the esoteric sounding side almost.
yeah,
It sounded like he was just. You're right. Honestly, it did come across like he was trying too hard to make it sound complicated.
Thank you.
So I can, and also, I don't agree with their approaches entirely, so I can agree. I can.
Wait, does she actually? I feel like she might have been paraphrasing someone else because I feel like if she literally just dropped the white replacement thing, then Hunter Avallone would have been on top of that in a second. I feel like she must have been paraphrasing someone else because I feel like Hunter Avallone would have been on top of that shit immediately. So I assume she was paraphrasing someone else.
Empathize with your frustration in this conversation. But, I mean, I'm trying to think where to start. So what about with immigration? What's the big deal of who cares if white people become a minority?
Well, do you think it's
Oh,
good to
she
be a
does believe it.
minority in general?
I mean, it doesn't have to be.
Okay, this is so frustrating for me. People don't know what minority means. Why does nobody know what minority means? Chat, I'm gonna test you right now. What does minority mean? In the context of race and ethnicity, what does minority mean? Do you guys know? I'm genuinely asking you. Yes. Okay. Minority doesn't just refer to having, like, less of a group of people, like a less total number. Okay, that's not what minority means, okay? That is typically true, like, yeah, the group is probably smaller. By minority, it usually means a group that holds less power, both institutionally and societally, right? So the reason why black people in this country are a minority isn't just because there are less black people in this country than there are white people. They're a minority because of that, as well as the fact they hold less power. Being simply like a minority in regards to the amount of people there are of your race in that country isn't a problem, right? If you go over to Japan right now, if I flew out to Japan, I would not be a minority. I wouldn't be. If I flew out to Japan and I moved to Japan and I was living in Japan, I would not be a minority, even though I'm white and there are not a lot of white people in Japan. The reason for that is, I mean, I'm not rich or anything, but I'm okay. I'm somewhat well off, right? I'm able to get the bills paid most months, right? I'm not exactly like being discriminated against on any like institutional level. I know there's a lot of racism in Japan, but it's not even close to the amount of systemic racism as you see for like black people in this country. You would live a pretty decent life, right? You would live a pretty decent life. Yes, you are, poor Zan. Okay, you got me there, all right? But that's just because my viewers don't donate enough, okay? But regardless, I would not be a minority in the way that sociologists define a minority were I to move to Japan. Or if I moved to South Africa, for example, I would not be a minority in the way that black people here in America are a minority. Because white people are a minority in South Africa, from what I understand. They are not a minority in regards to in terms of like institutional power. White people run South Africa, basically. Black people are oppressed as fuck in South Africa, and even though they're the majority of the population. So when Brittany defines, do you want white people to be a minority in this country, I don't think she knows what that means. Like, I don't care if there's more brown people than there are white people. I don't fucking care. As long as we're not murdering white people in fucking droves, like, with, like, scythes, just fucking cutting down white people to reduce the amount of white people there are. If it's literally just, like, there's more brown people immigrating here, and eventually you're gonna have more brown people in America than you're gonna have white people. I don't care. Why would I care? Why would I give a fuck? As long as we're not taking rights from anybody, then it's fine. Does she believe that, like, the brown people are going to come here and try to take rights away from us? Is that what she's concerned about?
I mean, do you think minorities in this country are treated well as it is?
It would depend which minority, I think.
Also, I want to point out here, the reason why black people have it so bad here in America, just as a brief example, is because it's not because of the amount of black people there are. Asian people in America are doing fine as a group, okay? As like a demographic here in America, despite being a numerical minority, Asian immigrants, Asian people here in America are doing fine. Like, overall, I believe they're, like, highest earning, most well-educated, like, everything across the board, like, most, like, successful in this country, regardless of the fact that they are numerically, not all of them though, but as a general group, just like we say that like white people have more power than black people as a general group in this country, that doesn't mean that every white person is more powerful than every black person, right? But as a group, Asian Americans tend to have more, tend to be more successful than like as a group than white people as a group, and especially as than black people as a group, right? So the reason why black people in America have had it so bad is because white people who've held like a lot of power, have specifically put black people down. The reason why black people as a minority in this country have it so bad is because they've been unable to build generational wealth, just generally speaking as a demographic, due to things like redlining, Jim Crow, and other like institutional barriers that have been formed, including the modern day criminal justice system, which has been demonstrably shown to be like have a lot of racial bias against black people and people of color. Yeah, it's not because there's less black people that black people have it so bad. Do you think that the amount of people with your skin color in the country makes you more powerful? That's not how it works. It's who has the power and who historically has had the power that determines that.
I mean, I think that most minority groups are not treated very well.
I mean, black
but
people aren't treated very well, but that's usually because of systemic
Correct.
racism, not just their minority status.
And so, like, my fear basically is that. Have you heard the little Timmy argument?
Yes, I've heard the little Timmy question.
Well, basically, we
little
are going to
Timmy
be debate
question?
on that on Thursday. Mia will be doing that. But basically, I think that, with the history white people have had in this country, and
We had a lot of racial bias against Asians as well. You are not wrong, especially now. There's been a rise in anti-Asian American hate crimes. Most certainly, the low audio Zan. I'll turn it up. This is as high as I can get it. The reason why Asian people are so well off in this country is that most Asians, like Asian Americans, are immigrants. Like fairly recently, within the last couple generations. Obviously, if you were an Asian American here during World War II, chances were you were put in a concentration camp. We had concentration camps here in America for Asian Americans, specifically Japanese Americans, but let's be real, they weren't making distinctions, okay? They weren't. When they were throwing people into internment camps, they weren't making distinctions. We put Japanese Americans and just Asian Americans as a whole into concentration camps in World War II because we were at war with Japan after the Pearl Harbor attack. But the reason why you don't really see that having as big of an effect on the Asian American population here is that most Asian Americans in the country now are like first, second, or third generation immigrants, and naturally speaking, regardless of where you're from, if you're an immigrant from another country coming here, you're probably going to be more well off than the native population because you have the money and the resources to immigrate here. You're probably coming here for work or for school or something that's going to help, something that helps, that would indicate you've already got a lot of resources at hand. Like, you've already got a lot of generational wealth, you've already got a lot of capital, you've already got, like, the resources you need to have a successful, like, family structure going down the generations in the future. Yeah, especially overseas. Like, especially. Like, if you're like like an African American immigrant, like you came from somewhere in Africa to America as an immigrant, chances are you're going to be more well off than most white people in this country because you probably came here because you had a lot of money and a lot of resources to come down over here. You probably came over here for work or for school because you've already got a lot of money, you know? Who's the blonde lady in the corner? That's Brittany.
and we likely probably do deserve some of this. And I've been in that white guilt era. I've gone through all of that.
With white guilt?
And yeah, I have. And so I get like where it's coming from, but I do think that if white people become the minority, there and with our history, that there is going to be some kind of racial revenge, and people are not going to be very sympathetic to the white person because of.
This reminds me of that girl that I went to school with when I was in elementary school, Eden. I've told you the story many times. The day after Obama got elected, I went to school, and there was this girl named Eden on the playground sitting at a bench crying, just like bawling her eyes out at recess. And I went and I talked to her and I asked her what was up. She thought that because Obama got elected president, that he was going to reinstitute slavery, but for white people, as revenge for slavery against black people. That's what she thought. She was sitting on the playground crying because she thought Obama was going to enslave white people as payback for slavery. That's what she thought. This was back in elementary school. I was in 5th grade. This is what this reminds me of a little bit. Come on, Brittany. Come on.
Of that history. Whereas minorities right now, people are a lot more sympathetic and they try to fix the wrongs that have been made because of the history as well.
So, do you really think that if people want to fix the wrongs that have been made, that's going to result in, like, revenge against white people?
I think that we should fix the wrongs.
When Obama gets elected president. This is my favorite image on the internet. I'm sorry. Maybe it's a little cringy, but this is my favorite image on the entire internet, all right? I will live live and die by this, but this is my favorite image on the internet. Okay? No, this is objectively hilarious. It's my favorite fucking image on the internet. I love it so much. I love it. God. I'm gonna tweet it. I'm gonna tweet it because I love this image so much. I'm just gonna tweet when I become president in that image.
That were made. I think we should do all of that stuff, but I also don't think that beating along white people
I know,
becoming a
Ethan.
minority is a good thing for white people.
But it's not beating it along. It just seems to be the natural progression of things.
Well, with how much immigration we're taking, it is. I think it is speeding it along.
We don't really take that many people in.
We kind of do, and it's not even just white people.
Hey Lonnie, can you turn the AC down to 66? It's a little hot in here. My back's getting sweaty. Knees weak. Arms spaghetti. Came on my pants already.
Becoming the minority is my only issue to that.
Well,
Most
let's
of the
just
people.
focus just on that for now.
Well, can I just say this really quick?
Yeah.
Okay, because most of the people that we are taking from south of the border, it's going to be low-skilled workers. And those jobs are all going to be replaced in the next like 10, 20 years. And so we are going to end up having all these people that we are going to have to take care of now because those are the jobs that are going to be replaced.
What makes you think we'll have to take care of them? Maybe they'll get a different job.
We're going to have a lot of.
This is like debating immigration number 1. Like this is debating immigration lesson 1 101, okay? Like basically every single like left and right wing economist agrees on like this simple fact that immigration, illegal and legal immigration in the long run significantly improves the economy and the lives of like the native population. The only group that loses out on business opportunities or on job opportunities from like immigration are non-high school graduates, and even then, the amount of money that immigrants put into the economy due to their work ends up helping those high school graduates in the long run. It's been like unbelievably, like an unbelievable consensus from left and right wing economists all agree that in the long run immigration will always be beneficial.
Americans that are going to need to be in that situation where they're going to have to find a different job. So why would we bring in more people that would fall into that category if we don't have to?
Because if you want to look at it historically, the economy it tends to adjust to these things. Usually if fields close
We've never gone
up,
through this.
usually if one work area closes up, another what's the saying? When a door closes up, the window opens up or whatever. You know what I'm saying, right?
Sure.
There
When
are
the window
other
closes, the door
opportunities that
opens.
come along, right? And I just feel like a lot of your reasoning here sounds like a very hypothetical, almost like slippery slope, what if fear. So like, for example, the little Timmy question. Are we going to get to a place where a little boy is mocked and ridiculed for being white? No, I don't think so. And it doesn't look like we're going that direction either. If you want to...
That already happens. Like, no hate to Hunter Avallone, and this doesn't do anything to prove Brittany's point, but that's already a thing that happens. If you're in like a white boy in like a pretty black neighborhood or like in a really black school where most of the students are black and you're like one of the few white students there, then you're probably gonna get made fun of for being white because you're different than everyone else. And we're talking about like kids here in like a setting where, yeah, like it's pretty common that happens, you know. But I don't think it's gonna happen on a systemic level that we're gonna see like white people get like, if this was the case, why wouldn't Asian people who have like compared to white people as like a demographic more power than white people in regards to like economic and social and everything like that, education wise, why aren't like Asian Americans running the country and like oppressing white people? if this is the case? Why isn't that happening? Why aren't we seeing any institutional racism from Asian Americans towards white people in America? Because it's not going to happen. Society's getting more, just like generally more progressive, right? It's just probably not going to happen. Yeah, like the MLK meme is like the most that you're going to get,
Look at
right?
it on a statistical level. Racial equality obviously is growing in America. The odds of that actually happening is extremely unlikely. Plus, we already have laws in place to protect against discrimination on that basis explicitly. So unless in your hypothetical nightmarish hellscape world, it's going to become like what, all the laws are going to be overturned and changed, the Civil Rights Act is going to be removed. Like, do you see how that's getting a little bit like out there? It seems very unlikely that the little Timmy question would ever actually become a reality.
Sorry. Do you think there's like no anti-white rhetoric going on?
Anti-white rhetoric
Yeah.
is significantly lesser, and it does not equal to children being discriminated.
Okay, so there's a lot of anti-white rhetoric going around. Don't get me wrong. Like it is becoming really popular and cool with like the Zoomer woke scold types to like hate white people and everything. I mean, we saw Vosh get canceled for saying he's not in favor of genociding white people, right? But like the people advocating for this have no power. We're talking about like 14-year-olds on TikTok and on Twitter, okay? We're not talking about people who hold any actual power. Even if they did hold power, we have specific structures in our government that prevent the avenues through which these policies that could possibly harm white people if they were a minority in this country to keep them from being oppressed. Like this is so bizarre. Oh my God, we're only 7 minutes in. We'll watch 10 minutes of it, okay? Because we've already been recording for 20.
On the basis of their race.
So, but do you think that's happening? I mean, it seems like I'm hearing it all over the place, even from a lot of white people, and I don't understand why they're doing
What
that.
kind
And
of
I actually,
anti-white
then
rhetoric?
just basically that white people are these villains, and it's a good thing that they are going to lose.
Make it 2 times speed, it gets much worse. Okay. We'll do
Any kind of
1.5.
power or any kind of status, and just talking about all the history that has
Well, the
happened.
thing
with
is it's not so much about it's good that they're going to lose power. It's more like, what's the justification for white people to have power? What's the, like, even the, we were talking about a second ago with white people becoming a minority. Who cares? Why is that actually a problem?
It's a problem for white people.
Why?
It's not a problem for anybody else.
But why? Like,
Because
I could agree that those people that are like, yay, white people declining, lol, lol, lol. Sure, maybe they're being kind of ditzy and stupid and annoying or whatever, but like, that does not equal 30 years down the line, white children are excluded from their classes because they're white and they're the colonizer. That's a joke. That would require literally undoing, I think, the Civil Rights Act, and it would be violating all kinds of equal, anti-discrimination clauses.
Yeah, the laws we have in place that prevent businesses and like renters or sellers from declining service to people of a certain race, like gender, demographic, whatever, also protect not just like people who are black, people who are women, people who are trans, people who are gay. They also protect protect people who are straight, white, male, and like cisgender. It's not just protecting minority groups. There are laws in place that prevent any discrimination on those bases, regardless of what group you fall into. Those would all have to be repealed, and I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's even close to possible.
So you think, okay, so don't you think that we, like you said, we have the protections in place for minorities and for groups in general already, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yet we still deal with a lot of racism. Yet we still deal with people who can't get jobs because of their race. Yet we still deal with,
Because it's not about just replacing white people. This is the problem. Is maybe this is what happens when you get a lot of information from Mayo or whatever the fuck his name is. But like, what really it comes down to is it's a much more nuanced conversation to be had about like what white privilege looks like, what systemic racism looks like, how that affects people, and it's significantly deeper than just like white people bad. In fact, systemic racism is explicitly not about judging the individual, and particularly about judging the system and trying to figure out how we can change the system. So like,
what's in the system that is what's in the system exactly that is
the system
racist?
is made up of people. That's true. So you could argue that there might be some people in the system that are racist, but generally it's about, it could be in a policy way that you could fix that. There's ways
What
to...
kind of policies?
Well, I don't know exactly, but there are biases that play a role here. So for example, the death penalty. Black people are disproportionately given the death penalty, and they're more likely to be given the death penalty if they're accused of killing a white person rather than if they're accused of killing another black person. So there
I mean,
seems
how
to
recent is that though? Like, I feel like the death penalty is kind of an outdated argument. I think like
no, the death penalty still happens all the time, but that is an example of where systemic racism is prevalent. And my solution to that would be actually get rid of the death penalty. I don't think we should have
yeah,
the death penalty.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
So okay, there you go. But like that, so that there you go. There's a solution to a problem with systemic racism that doesn't have anything to do with white people bad.
Yeah, but that's an extreme example. I feel like
Why? How is it
because
extreme?
No,
it's
it's not.
because it's just not a lot of people are going to be going facing the death penalty. That's just not. It's not a very common thing. Where I think when people talk about systemic racism, I mean, oh god, my phone's gonna start ringing. Let me decline that.
The reason why we bring up the death penalty is because it's one of the most inarguable examples of racism in the criminal justice system that you can bring up. When we've got literal, like, overwhelming statistical evidence that, like, a black person is way more likely to get the death penalty for murdering a white person than another black person, that is, like, the perfect example of the racial bias in the justice system. The fact that the justice system views the lives of white people as more, like, losing that as more deserving of punishment than, like, taking the life of a black person, right? Not to mention the death penalty, like, the overwhelming amount of people who've gotten the death penalty here in America, I believe, are black. From my research that I did for that one hippy dippy, like, Rumble thing, I believe the majority of people who've been, like, given the death penalty in America are black. Like, an overwhelming amount, from what I remember.
When people are talking about systemic racism, I think a lot of them are probably talking about, the courts and how black people are given, twice as much of a sentence for the same crime as a white person.
I don't know if it's twice, but yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, so like those kind of arguments. But again, like you can still have the systems in place that protect minority groups. But if their people, like you said, are the system, there's not really much you can do. And
that's not true. That's not true. That's the doomer mentality right there. There's nothing you can do to change it. You can. I can give you something right now that could change it. So, for example, since black people tend to be also disproportionately poor, black people, one of the reasons they get longer sentences. Are you still with me, Brittany?
Yeah, I'm just typing something so I don't want it to be clicking really loud.
Okay, gotcha. If they are, since black people are disproportionately in poverty, if they are given a sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second there. Part of the reason that black people get longer sentences is because they have poor quality lawyers and representation. So a way that we could fix that is more federal funding to buff up lawyers and public defenders. That right there, nothing to do with white people bad, but it could potentially fix a very serious systemic racism issue.
Yeah, public defenders are criminally underpaid. It's ridiculous. Like, public defenders, like, so there's a rule here in America where if you get arrested and no matter how poor you are, and you ask for a lawyer, the government has to provide you with one. They have to provide you with a lawyer. And so the idea is that, like, you have these public defenders. These are lawyers that specifically, get paid by the courthouse, basically, to represent those that can't get their own private defense, right? And those public defenders get paid, like, minuscule amounts. Like, they really don't get paid much. And they have so many cases they have to do all at once. It's ridiculous.
Sure, I think that we should do that. I have no problem with that. I mean, I would
so
love to do
you agree with me then? You agree with fixing the systemic racism stuff. So then what is it about the Mayo Groyper stuff that, other than the immigration thing, that you find so...
I agree. We need to. There's a lot of problems we need to fix. I think we need to invest in these low-income communities and try to fix the issues there, invest in education, and hopefully that will fix a lot of problems. I think that we should also, with our welfare, I mean, I'm not entirely sure, like I haven't done a lot of research on like how, like what the requirements are, but you hear a lot of people talking about how they kind of go towards, single parents. I think that our welfare should be kind of more leaning towards married couples, and maybe that will kind of incentivize people to stay together.
That's not really that probably wouldn't work as well as it sounds like it would hypothetically. But the thing is that even if we hypothetically did fix all of these systemic racist issues, doesn't that just further prove that down the line in the future, the little Timmy question is even more absurd?
No, because what you're talking about, what I'm talking about, are two different things. Like right now, with what I'm talking about is like the mentality of people, is like changing people's minds. And with how long our history is, and even if we did all of those things that you said, it's still not going to change the minds of people that are still going to be angry about the history that has happened in this country. And
I actually don't think that's correct. I think that there are ways to ameliorate that. For example, you talk a lot about reparations. Now, you would have to do it in the right way, of course, but I think that there are ways that if there is somebody who is still has like a lineage of slavery, right, in their past, I think that actually giving a payment to those people would absolutely be a good thing. I heard something really interesting. It was talking about how reparations are a step to forgiveness. So there are solutions that, again, we can implement them.
You know what I thought of might be, like, the best way to do reparations in this country for black people? You have, like, organizations that have a shit ton of money behind them that go into, like, impoverished neighborhoods that are, like, mostly people of color, and then they for free like do a bunch of maintenance on the houses that they own and increase their property value so those people can sell those houses and buy better houses in better places. And they have more money because like obviously if you have like a really shitty house, like a shitty 2-bedroom house that's like falling apart and you want to sell it, it's not going to be really worth all that much and it's going to suck. Most of those people don't even own homes though, so that's a big problem as well. But like for people that do own the homes, like increasing their property value so they can sell them for more money, like just for free, helping them like fix the house and get it to a point where it would be worth like a lot more money, like that could be a pretty interesting way to do it.
There that would go to fix these issues that doesn't have anything to do with white people bad, that could even potentially fix this mentality. And just to clarify, just a dangerous mentality or something does not mean that this means the entire laws are going to be rewritten in the next 30 years and then white children are going to be completely discriminated against for being white.
I mean, like, okay, because we've had the reparations debate on our channel, and it would be incredibly hard to prove who was a slave. They didn't keep very good records back then, also.
Well, you would have to go through, but right there, at the very least, I'm able to provide you with a potential solution that doesn't
think
have
that-
anything to do with white people bad.
So the problem is, regardless of who's a descendant of a slave and who isn't, I'm pretty sure most black people in America are descendants of slaves, okay, for starters, okay? And second, regardless of whether or not like you're a black person in this country and you're a descendant of like slaves, chances are you're still the victim of systemic racism and are probably like, morally speaking, probably owed some kind of reparation for that, if that's what you're in favor of.
Well, I think a better solution would be investing in the majority of black communities, like and investing in that way rather than just giving checks to people. I think that might be a more realistic solution at least.
Sure.
But like again, even still, like you're talking about still changing the minds of people that it's going to be incredibly difficult to do. I mean, and you
But
know,
what's the worst that's going to happen? Really? Do you
it's
actually?
still a gamble. I'm not really wanting to take. It's not
It's
something
not.
I really
You
want.
don't know what's gonna. I can tell you what's going to happen with full confidence. Absolutely nothing. This is just what this is chalked up narratives made by people that want you to be afraid of white people becoming the minority. Ooh, spooky. When in reality, it doesn't fucking matter. It's not going to matter. And also the little Timmy question. Again, you need to tell me the only way that would become a reality is if laws were rewritten. So you need to tell me how that's going to take place
Wait,
realistically.
what do you mean by if laws were rewritten?
I believe the Civil Rights Act protects like equality across the board, and also you have protected classes, and you cannot discriminate against people on the basis of their race. So you would not be able to discriminate at a school on a private level or a federal level against a student for their race. That would be illegal. So you need to tell me how that they're going to rewrite the laws, how a dangerous, spooky mentality of white people bad is going to rewrite laws.
It's not even a law, is it? It's in the Constitution, right? There would have to be a constitutional amendment in order to repeal that, right? Like that's like a massive, massive step. Like we can't even repeal Roe v. Wade. Like the Republicans can't even pull that off. They have to do like weird fucking shit like individual states to try to make it so abortion isn't legal, like what Texas did.
Right. I mean, but that's already the case. But hate crimes are like I think one of the hardest things to prove in courts, and so that's why you hear a lot of lawyers talking about how they try to undercharge a bit because they think if they overcharge with a hate crime, they might not be able to prove it, and it can cost them their entire case. So it just even if that's like the case, and all these things are in you have all these protections in place, I still don't think that you are really going to be able to address the actual issue because people can, because this could still happen, and they can act like it's for some other reason. They don't have to sit there and
This is conspiracism. This is like fear bait right now. This is like a creepypasta. What you're telling me right now.
No, I don't think it, but I understand the way that thinking can happen, and
they should
I just
be
don't
true.
think it's something I would speed up.
But here's the thing. Hold on. You can understand how that thinking happens. I don't condone people shitting on white people. I would not be in favor of that. In fact, I just made fun of Twitter woke scolds for shitting on white people for being white and writing a book about pasta or something. But you can understand all day how that mindset and mentality comes along. But the thing that you cannot seem to explain to me is how that mentality is going to lead to laws being rewritten. I'm going to keep going back to that because I think you recognize that that's a very large leap
Wolfie
to make.
Universe.
Mentalities changing are not going to necessarily rewrite protected classes in America's law. So that's the thing, is you can understand that mentality and even empathize with it. That's fine. But it's not going to lead to the little Timmy question of a little boy who's just like blatantly discriminated against at his school on the basis of his race.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like they don't have to sit there and say it's because he's white. It's going to be in their minds.
So
and
it's just
that's
going to conveniently be the one white kid in the class that they're all like, you're in timeout for an extra period of time. Why? Is it because I'm white? No.
No, I don't think
I
don't think it's going to be like the teachers doing that and stuff. I think it would be more the kids and in the classroom. That's, I think, more so what the cases that we talk about.
Okay, so then what you would have right there is something that would need to be solved on a school level, and then you would have to. What would happen is the kid would tell their mom that they were being bullied. The mom would call the school, and the school would have to enforce.
I don't think Hunter's arguing the right thing right now. The reason why you see like racism like the type that Brittany is describing here is generally due to a lack of exposure. There's a reason why people who've not really met that many black people in this, like white people who haven't met a lot of black people, typically tend to be more racist. Like it's because they haven't really been around a lot of black people, you know? If you are if you're in a country where there's more immigration, there's more people of a bunch of different races all living and coexisting in that country, you know, simultaneously, and there's not as much what's the word for it? There's a word for it, enclaves. Like there's not as many like enclaves, like certain areas that are like a concentration of a certain race or ethnicity, then you're gonna see less of that type of racism. Like, and the way that we make that not a thing is by fighting against systemic depression or oppression. By fighting against systemic oppression. That's how you prevent that from being a thing. Because the way that we run our country right now, the position that black people are in this country right now, has basically consolidated most black people to very particular parts of the country, mostly like low-income areas, while white people typically are in more high-income areas, or at least middle-income areas. So if you go to a school in like a nice like middle-class kind of neighborhood, chances are most of your classmates are going to be white. And you're not going to have a lot of black classmates. But if you live in like a really bad neighborhood, like a really low-income area, most of your classmates are going to be black. Or like POC or whatever, right? So it's kind of like that's the kind of stuff that encourages racism, when you've got these different groups not having a large sort of like pool of a bunch of different people from different places, different races, different ethnicities to sort of coexist together and cohabitate, you know what I mean?
Force basically a policy or something or another to make sure that wasn't taking place.
Come on, what happens to the kid whose mom calls the school? How well does that go for him?
This is all just so conspiracy based. I can't. No. I can't imagine.
Wait,
like
what?
This is.
Hold on. My mom was like the nightmare of the PTA. Okay. My mom's told stories about it on stream. I've had her on here to talk about it. My mom was the nightmare of the school the school PTA, all right? Like the teachers hated my mom and the other parents hated my mom because she would raise fucking hell if she was pissed about something, all right? I never got any of the kickback from that, at least none that I remember. Is she implying that like it's like when you snitch in prison, like people aren't going to like you because your mom called the school? Like that's not like a thing that really happens.
Here's my main issue here is like you're opposing immigration, which is a net good on society. I know you've heard the arguments on your stream before. It benefits the economy. It benefits our culture.
For now.
Immigrants.
Granted, I'm white.
For now.
Okay. I want to. This is something else that I want to address too, because you mentioned before immigrants taking up our welfare stuff. Currently, immigrants pay far more into welfare programs than they take out. So right now, immigrants are a net positive. And then all of a sudden, now you're saying no, stop that because I'm scared that hypothetically, little Timmy question happens. Do you realize why? Do you realize why that not only sounds, no offense, like blatantly delusional, but also just really privileged? Like there are people all over the world, particularly in America, that benefit from immigration. Immigration strengthens the economy, and in turn, that benefits American workers. There are people everywhere, all over America, that benefit from immigration. And basically, you're saying you don't care about those people, just shut it down because creepypasta.
So what happens? But again, so you're doing the economic argument when machines are going to take all those jobs.
It's not just about them working menial jobs. Immigrants can work other jobs. There will be other quote unquote menial jobs. Like I said, throughout history, we've seen stuff like this. Oh, they were scared that if cars came along, there would no longer be any jobs for the people that made like the buggies for the horses. And you know what? There wasn't. But other jobs and other things opened up. That's how the economy tends to work.
The thing is,
all right, I think we've seen enough. I want to give my thesis statement on this entire thing. This is why I don't really buy into the kind of thing that politically provoked tries to be. Not politically provoked specifically. There are other shows that do the same thing. But like, here's why I don't really like that idea. Watch the last 5 minutes. I'm good. Let me say this. I don't think it's possible to have a debate panel show where you've got like a right-wing host and a left-wing host to try to keep things neutral, because the right is like a parasite, okay? When you allow like crazy racist people, like Nazis and what have you. Like they platform Nick Fuentes from my memory. When you allow that type of people into your community, they will do everything they can, and they know what they're doing to try to brainwash you into believing what they believe. Racism is something that has to be taught, and they are very good at teaching racism. It's very clear that what's happened here is that Brittany and her exposure to like the groypers that have clearly gotten into her community because she, allows them there, or the politically provoked team. I don't know if there's like who else is on board or who else does this, but like clearly the like people behind politically provoked have allowed crazy motherfuckers to be in that community, and it seems as though she's been talking to those people, and they've been trying to get her on board with the idea that like if brown people were able to get power in this country, they would exact revenge on the white people. Like we're literally talking about like the type of shit that like little white kids believed when Obama got elected, that like there was going to be slavery now as payback. And I think the assumption here is like pretty clear. Like white people who are racist or white people who are bought into this kind of shit would probably do what she's describing. Like she probably thinks that like yeah, if I was in power I would probably invoke the policies that I'm talking about here. And so she assumes that black people or POC, if they were in power, rather than white people, would do the same. It's the same kind of thing as like, have you ever argued with like your Republican friend on Facebook and you're in favor of like social safety nets and your Republican friend isn't? Your Republican friend's against all of that, right? And they say you just want all the wealth for yourself, and that's not true. But they think that's what you believe, and that's because that's what they want. They want all the wealth for themselves. They're selfish, and they're projecting their selfishness onto you because they assume everyone must think like that. They can't be the mean, greedy, selfish people. Everyone's like that. The left-wing people are just hiding it, is what they believe. And I feel like that's what we're getting here only with race. I don't know. This is why I don't believe in like the impartial, like two, like left wing, right wing hosts, like completely nonpartisan like debate shows. It's always going to go right wing. Like anyone who claims to be non-political or like anti-partisan or whatever always ends up going to the right, because the left, if anything, is like how like when you try to push two magnets together. That are the same poles, like a negative, negative, positive, positive, they push away. That's what the left is like. The left pushes people away, while the right sucks people in, okay? You will only ever move further right if you try to do a show like this. It always happens. I've seen it happen a million times. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell icon, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all my social media, all linked down below. And if you want to support me financially so I can keep on doing this show and making a living for myself, feel free to donate through my website, YouTube, Twitch, or Streamlabs, or Patreon. And of course, at $200, I will clear off my desk here and put a little blanket down and put my cat on here, and you guys can see the cat. We've only made $25 today, so let's try to kick it up. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you all tomorrow.